You know the story of the Nissan Qashqai by now, right? Family hatchback comes along looking all like an SUV, creates the crossover segment. Believe it or not, that was 11 years ago. Since then, we've had the second Qashqai, and that one's been facelifted, which is what we're looking at today. So we're not going to keep you that long because we've already done a review of the Nissan Qashqai. One of the first videos I ever did, in fact, before I too updated my grille. This month we're looking at the Nissan Qashqai. So we've come to Sunderland, where they mack 'em. Anyways, the question is, have the changes really improved the Qashqai that much? And now the crossovers are all mainstream, is the originator still one of the best? Well, they don't call them Washington weeds around here for nout. These things are everywhere. In its first decade, Nissan shifted more than 2 million of them in Europe alone, and it remains Europe's best-selling SUV crossover thingy. And it shows no sign of slowing down. Qashqai was the 4th best-selling car in the UK in 2017, and as of today, it's sat 3rd in the charts. The point I'm making is the Qashqai's doing something right, innit? I mean, it's so popular that Nissan needn't have bothered facelifting it at all. It seems more like a gesture of goodwill than anything else. And actually, yep, the changes are mild to say the least. Now, I read the entire press release when this car came out, all 4,000 words of it, and it seems to boil down to a new top spec model, including a bit more tech, a new grille, improvements behind the wheel, and improvements to the wheel. Seriously, there's 3 paragraphs about that. The rim's 3.5 millimeters thicker. Okay, let's go behind the wheel. Qashqai was always lovely to drive, right? Always had a nice balance between SUV style comfort and visibility and hatchback style handling. But there are now more than 20 direct crossover type alternatives to the Qashqai, as Nissan has it. But they're fairly diverse in what they offer, from the overtly sporty to great value, to the all-rounders, to the premium, to the utterly depressing. And for me, even though there's nothing inherently wrong with the way the Qashqai drives, it's just fallen behind a little bit. Nissan claims to have tweaked the ride, the handling and the NVH based on customer feedback. So the damping's a little softer to cushion the pothole blows a bit better, but the anti-roll bars are stiffer to reduce body roll around corners. That's the theory anyway, although they are ostensibly mutually exclusive attributes. It is still a comfy car, right? But to be honest, there's maybe a little bit too much harshness to the general ride. At the same time, it still rolls quite a lot when you go around a corner. Handles well, but before we'd driven loads of these things, this really did feel surprisingly like a hatchback, but now there are other cars that are doing it better. No real changes in the cabin, but it's still one of the better ones, albeit with a couple of weaknesses. Driving position's great, loads of room, loads of adjustment, great visibility, and there is a nice sense of being cocooned in here. You don't sit too high, you actually sit quite low relative to the dashboard. Everything feels chunky. However, the infotainment screen looks small now and it's still really frustrating to use, and it still hasn't got Apple CarPlay, which is vexing, or the Android one. Still, it remains one of the most refined of the crossovers because it hasn't just had a facelift, it's had fillers too. There's more sound insulation at the front and thicker glass at the back, and generally this is very good at keeping wind and tyre noise out. Even when it's fitted with a diesel and a whiny CVT gearbox, which the car I'm driving there is. As it goes, there's been no change to the engine range, but there didn't really need to be. It's all impressively economical, ranging from just under 50 at worst to over 70 at best. As before, we'd recommend sticking with the lower end of the range. 1.5 diesel with a manual if you're going to be doing lots of miles, or the 1.2 petrol if you're just going around the doors mostly. In both cases, front wheel drive. That's all you need. Your fuel economy will be better, and it's your tyres that are going to get you off your drive when it's snowy anyway, not your 4-wheel drive system. Though I have to say, this particular car, again, diesel, CVT, a combination that would usually make you go, oh no, is surprisingly quiet and non-depressing when it gets going. Small diesel, so it is a bit noisy when you start it up, and because it's a CVT, you put your foot down and but if you drive it carefully, you're going to get about 50 miles per gallon out of it, which for a car this fast, pretty good. As usual, Nissan's trim levels are bafflingly named and designed, I'm sure, specifically to allow Nissan dealers to bamboozle potential customers with words and make them buy more than they need. All you actually need is a center, whatever it's called. The second one. The bottom one's on plastic wheel trims, yak. But the one above that, which costs less than £22,000, has alloys and climate control and Nissan's board system. Nissan's luggage board system, which is a very handy practicality addition that not only makes the boot easier to load, but much more versatile. Space and practicality overall hasn't changed with the update, but that's no bad thing because there was never anything wrong with the Qashqai in that department anyway. Plenty of space in the cabin, plenty of storage, and a boot that might not be the biggest in the class by volume, but it's big enough. And the Qashqai retains its 5-star Euro NCAP rating, plus there's a nice optional new feature called Pro Pilot, which is fancy Dan cruise control if you like. Keeps you in lane automatically on the motorway, and it'll do the stopping and starting again for you in traffic jams. It's basically a safety feature that frees you up to think about other things while you're driving. Seriously though, you should always pay attention, obviously. And the traffic jam thing is actually very useful and quite cool, especially if you have a busy commute. And so, in conclusion, the Qashqai has probably sunk down the crossover hierarchy a little bit. I'd rather drive a Peugeot 3008 and I'd rather go to the shops in a Skoda Karoq. But it's still canny mint and it's canny easy to recommend. The end. For a more detailed review of this and all the other crossover thingies, go to HonestJohn.co.uk. Please leave your comments below and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for your time. Bye.